In recent years here, it seems like classic Sonic of all characters out of Sega's franchises has been seemingly getting the short end of the stick here. Now, what exactly could be going on then with regard to the latest entry here in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise? Yes, that's right, everyone. I'm talking about Sonic's 35th anniversary game, which we still have no official confirmation on what exactly the type of Sonic game it could very well end up being. So with all that out of the way, what exactly could the future hold here, and which timeline could we in fact have Classic Sonic running down here as the 35th anniversary rapidly approaches, and we very soon will be celebrating the Blue Blur's special day then around the world here. So first up, I'm going to get it right out of the way and rip the band-aid off, so to speak, as we go ahead and go down the darker timeline. So that will be, say for instance, if there is no actual classic Sonic game revealed, and there is literally nothing shown from Sega or Sonic Team at all in the form of trailers, announcements, even a teaser trailer here. So this would be really a sad fate for the classic form here of the Blue Blur. Because, I mean, hey, it hasn't been all bad, to be fair. There have been a few high points within recent years, back in time, thanks to the Chaos Emeralds, and go back to 2011's Sonic Generations, where it all began for classic Sonic. A more positive timeline, or so we thought. So this was the game that really kicked off the classic Sonic revival, and bringing back the pudgier form here of the Blue Blur. But also it's noted that he did not have any voice lines whatsoever and was completely mute. So other than that small nitpick, personally, I found classic Sonic to be highly enjoyable here in Sonic Generations, but sadly wish there was more to him. And also, speaking of sad, the physics for a lot of his momentum are completely not close at all to the original Genesis games. Yeah, it might look like classic Sonic, it might feel a little bit like classic Sonic, but when you get right down to it, this is definitely not the same classic Sonic from the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive days of old. So, keeping that in mind, for what it's worth, it was a very decent first attempt here at bringing back the classic formula within a more modern-ish setting for the series. However, it wouldn't stop there though, and classic Sonic would actually return a few more times throughout the Sonic series with varying degrees of result. So then, besides Generations here in 2011, like I said previously, what other games could have this pudgier form of the Blue Blur actually shown up in? Well, that's what we're also going to be going over here very shortly. But to wrap up my thoughts here very quickly on Generations, it was a very good first attempt, but hey, could have done a little bit more with it, could have had a few more levels thrown in for good measure. But hey, it is what it is, a solid first attempt. Oh boy, 2015 Sonic Forces. What can I say that has not been said about this game? I know this is probably like beating a dead horse at this point, for lack of a better, more appropriate word here. But yeah, Sonic Forces was not good. It very much downgraded all the problems I had with Sonic Generations and made them almost unplayable. I remember when this came out, everyone was so hyped, the fan base was so excited, classic Sonic somehow returning. You know, and it's going to be the Renaissance. It's going to be like the new Sonic Adventure 2 of the Sonic series. No. Heck no. This was a very big disappointment. And this almost killed any and all, you know, potential love I had for the franchise at the time. I was almost embarrassed to tell any of my friends that I even picked up this game when it finally launched. And that's not even including the Avatar stuff. Oh, don't even get me started on this stuff, guys. You know, it's one thing to strip down classic Sonic here and really make his gameplay all the more simplified and make the momentum even more frustrating to deal with. But then having a second character, well, technically third character here, that should have been relegated to classic Sonic, but instead is just a mix of modern Sonic gameplay but slowed down? Oh, hell no. So this is where I drew the line. This is what basically almost killed my love for the franchise, like I said. However, it wouldn't be until a few years later, Sonic and Friends returned, but in a spin-off game, of all things. Yeah, that's right. So you could play as Sonic and Tails in Super Monkey Ball. Which, I mean, hey, that's something. You know, at least it's better than nothing, right? Am I right? Well, that answer is a mixed one, to say the least. Fast forward a few years later, and we get Sonic Superstars, a 2.5D version of the classic games here. And from the looks of it, yeah, everything looks to be in order. Everything looks fun for the most part and competent. However, there's one thing lacking about this game, and that was not just the physics for me, again. However, they weren't as bad as Sonic Forces, so I'll give Superstars at least that point with that in mind. But yeah, this was just not fun, and the worst part of Superstars for me was the boss battles. The absolute pinpoint accuracy that you need to have when fighting against the bosses in that game were incredibly annoying and frustrating, to put it mildly. I hope I never have to go back to Superstars ever again, unless for some reason friends want to boot it up locally or online and just have fun. Otherwise, as a serious playthrough, I'm never touching Superstars again. So then, why don't we go now and see, on a more positive note, what potential timeline Classic Sonic might in fact be traveling down. So then, why don't we switch gears here and go to the positive aspect of things. So of course, first up, we have, yes, the more recent Shadow Generations, which blended, of course, the modern style gameplay with classic 2D side-scrolling, thrown in for good measure. And this was an absolute banger of a treat. I cannot emphasize enough how much I love this game. And not just because of, being able to play as Shadow and whatnot. That part's fun, but it also came with a remastered version of Sonic Generations. However, it seems as though nothing was really changed all that much with the Sonic Generations portion of this game. But for the Shadow side of things, this was absolutely as close to perfection as we can get. So that was something there in the right direction for SEGA and Sonic Team. So what exactly am I getting at all this? What other games could there possibly be, to potentially save the timeline here? Well, enter Sonic Mania. Sonic Mania originally came out in 2017, and this classic style game basically set the entire world on fire. Not literally, of course, but metaphorically speaking here, and with the sales of it, this was an absolute hit with fans, and even fans that weren't, interested as much in the Sonic series anymore, and even non-fans. This really helped revitalize classic Sonic's potential after Generations originally did. And things were looking somewhat brighter for the Hedgehog, finally. We're on the right track, things are going well. It's a mix of old and new levels here, all sprinkled in together. It's like the perfect, I guess you could say, dessert, It's got everything you want on it in terms of toppings and whatnot, and it couldn't get any better, Where exactly could we go from here? So, with Sonic Mania, the only thing that could come close to it is, of course, playing through the good old classic Genesis games themselves. At the end of the day, that's what started this whole franchise. That's where it all began. I guess you could say that's the origin, get it, of the Sonic series. So yeah, I'm not trying to come off any kind of way here, or a hater, or a purist, not at all. I really only grew up with these games from the Sonic Mega Collection and the adventure games, so take that for what you will with regard to what type of Sonic fan I am. But I really want classic Sonic to have a good future here. He deserves it, Because think about it, we wouldn't have Adventure and also Frontiers without these original games. We wouldn't have anything. There would be no guest appearances, no cameos, no Sonic movie. Speaking of which, no 3 Sonic movies. There would be nothing. It would just be an empty void of silence, So, in my opinion here, that's why the important part of this timeline is that I feel like Sega and Sonic Team need to focus on classic Sonic and give him his own dedicated, I guess, line of games. Just something. Whether they at least look like Superstars, but the momentum is actually better and fixed, or they go the more 2D route like Sonic Mania did, and focus on that side. There has to be some balance here. There cannot just be 3D Sonic and then a random Sega game featuring classic Sonic every like 2 to 5 years. That's not going to cut it when it comes to representing your original series here that started this entire franchise. That's not going to fly. Not so much with like more modern casual fans over the last couple of years because of the movies, but all of us that have been here waiting patiently, Sega, for you to go and, you know, give classic Sonic and friends some proper love and attention. You can't just neglect here this important, you know, piece of your history and expect everyone to just be okay with it and like there's nothing wrong. Because, I mean, to be fair, this is Sonic we're talking about here. This is your, you know, your number one, at least we thought, one of your top, you know, money makers at the end of the day in the gaming space. This is what you need to do. I really do hope that classic Sonic gets a lot more love in the future here. As far as things go, hopefully at some point we do get a brand new classic style game. I really hope that we do, because if any Sega franchises deserve it here the most out of everything, it's Sonic. Well, obviously, you know, classic Sonic. But like I said, whether it's like Sonic Mania and that's fully 2D, or if they go the 2.5D route here, like with Sonic Superstars, I'm at the point where I'm completely indifferent to whichever route they end up going. I just want a new classic style Sonic game to be made. Because like I said, at the end of the day, this franchise deserves to really shine and flourish here and grow and evolve. It doesn't deserve to just stay stagnating and, you know, trying to rely on cameos every, like I said, couple years in other games that people may or may not play, let alone Sonic fans. May or may not, probably most likely end up playing at all. You know, so it's just one thing to think about here for food of thought that I wanted to get off my chest, because like I said, it really is something that it cannot be understated enough how important it is for Sega to get their priorities straight here when it comes to the Sonic, I guess you could say, gaming landscape. There has to be, like I said, some balance here with regard to both 2D and 3D, classic and modern. There has to be something, because we can't just keep doing this over and over and over again, or you're going to keep losing fans. And it's really going to hurt the franchise's reputation, you know? So take all this for what you will, guys, but then let me know down below what you think about this. Would you want a brand new classic style Sonic game to actually come out for either the 35th anniversary or perhaps a few years after? Just so we have something new to actually experience here. And speaking of new, do you want it to be completely original levels, or say a mix of both old and new levels, like what was done with Sonic Mania? Let me know that also down below, what your guys' thoughts are here regarding classic Sonic's future, and what timeline do you think he will end up running down here? Will it be a perhaps darker one, or in fact a brighter one, with everything going on and all the speculation here that we really have, until we get some kind of official confirmation from Sega and Sonic Team? So until then, like I said, it's really anyone's guess about what's going to happen and what timeline the Blue Blur will end up speeding down when it comes to his classic adventures here throughout the years. So yeah, I would say then, with all that in mind, I feel like it's really important to keep hope, though, in these difficult times. Because, I mean, think about it. Back when Sonic Forces was not even out yet and people were already trying to hype up the series as much as they could, you know, we didn't lose hope then. And we're not going to lose hope now. You know, things may seem a lot different, but I feel like at the end of the day here, if we can just have some hope, then maybe anything is truly possible. And I know that's really cheesy and probably incredibly cringe to hear, but sometimes you just have to have some blind faith. And when it comes down to it here, I'm willing to risk it on Sega and Sonic Team, and to hopefully have all my questions answered, or at least the important ones here. And any fears of mine are hopefully shelved for a while, and this franchise can get back to what it was, you know, back to those good days where Sonic was not just a meme or anything like that, or a joke, but being cool. You know, being a respected franchise, and being one that I can actually be proud to say I'm a part of and a fan of when it would come up in conversation. Very rarely, but when it would, I could chime in and be like, hey, speaking of Sonic, this, and that. So, yeah. But these are just my 2 cents, though, so again, take them for what you will. But why don't we get a discussion going down below about the Blue Blur's future here for the classic side of the franchise. And like I said, let's get talking about it. I really want to know what you guys think. And have you, played any of these recent games like Superstars, Mania? Heck, even Sonic Origins. It's a great collection for all the classic games. And I can't help but go back to it here every time I want to feel nostalgic about the Sonic Gems collection and Mega collection. With these classic games, just to play them on modern hardware here. And just take a trip down memory lane, So anyway then, on that note, that will just about do it for everything here regarding my thoughts on what exact type of future classic Sonic might end up having. So then again, let me know your thoughts on this video down below. And so, until next time when we all meet again, I've been your host for today, Azure, and I am signing off. But be sure to keep it tuned right here for all this and much, much more from me. So then everyone, I'll be sure to catch you guys all in my next video on the flip side. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.